Welcome to SolFul Connections, where we skip the small talk and head right into the soul talk. I'm Amanda Solar, and each week we share the kinds of stories that remind us we're not alone. It's about being human, raw and unfiltered, just real talk. Let's connect.
Connection.
So, welcome, Colleen Clemens. Colleen is the director of Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies at Kutztown.
Yep.
And she is the author of E equals MC squared, which is what we're going to talk about today. For the most part,
Yeah.
I talk about a lot of things here, Colleen. So,
I love it.
well, welcome, Colleen. Thank you so much for being here. Before we start talking about your book, I just wanted to ask, what are you consuming right now? Like, is there a show you're watching, a book you're reading, a music you're listening to?
I am reading this book called Still Life. I can't remember her name. It's so beautiful. I was just reading it this morning and it's gorgeous. So I'm reading that. My husband and I are watching a show called The Man on the Inside with Ted.
Oh, I love that show.
Okay. We're not like binge people, but
Yes.
we finally sat down and watched a show. So that has been just delightful. It's like it's just like just smart enough and just fun enough and just
Yeah.
sweet enough. Yeah, so those are the two things that rose up really, really quickly. But yeah, this book, I'm in love with it. And it takes place in Italy and it's sweeping and descriptive and I just came off from reading a bit this morning and it's really good.
Well, you know what? I am going to move that up because that's on my list still.
Sarah Winman, that's her name. Sarah Winman.
Okay. I don't even remember why. First of all, I love the cover.
The cover is gorgeous. Yes.
Right? And I shouldn't have learned because I have purchased books based on the cover and been very disappointed.
Sure. Yeah, same. I've never learned that lesson.
Right.
Because sometimes I buy a book because of the cover. I mean, the reason I'm reading it is because a former student posted about on something and she's just said this is one of the best books I've ever read. And I'm like, wow, if somebody's willing to say that,
Yes.
I'm willing to look at it and
Okay.
I love it. And it's so sweeping. It's so beautiful. It's such good company. I really am loving it.
Okay, well, I'm moving it up. And also, I love that you're reading because I was thinking about it and I think, I wish that we could just say to everybody, listen, just read. Read, even if you read a page a day, there's something so powerful about the act of reading. And I can't quite put my finger on it, Colleen.
It feels almost like resistance in a way to all the other things that are pulling us. It requires a level of focus and concentration that I don't think is necessarily rewarded all the time in the world that we're in. So, and I know it's hard. I tell my students all the time, I don't think I'd be as well read as I am if I had grown up with cell phones because they are really, I get it. I don't blame them for not being, or my daughter for not having that focus and that attention span. But I think and especially like with AI, like I think it is like necessity at this point to just sit and read and be in the world of another human. It's such a way to connect. So I think that's what you're maybe talking, like there's a lot of tension about just finding time to sit because you have to sit. And audiobooks, I count that. I'm not one of those people that's like a snob about that. But just to consume another person's story beyond like a 15-second reel, I think is like pushing back against all these things that are pushing against us. So I agree. Like even a page, I would love if people read a page a day instead of that 3 minutes of scrolling. And then you finish a book and you're like, oh, I finished a book. And my students are readers. Like there's still readers out there. There's still people who swoon over books. And it makes me really happy.
Yeah, that makes me happy to hear.
Yeah, people are reading still. I see people reading. I will always talk to somebody on a train if they're reading. I'll ask them what they're reading. I just think it invites conversation in a way that everybody's sitting and scrolling. Like nobody's like, oh, what Instagram feed are you reading?
Right.
But a book, a tangible book, really connects us still in a way. We've always done this as humans. We've always done these stories. And so I just feel like that's how we connect. And I really love, obviously, I've dedicated my life to books, but I really love the act of reading too.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? You just gave me a thought that it would be such a cool podcast for somebody to like sit on a train and just ask somebody, what are you reading?
Yeah, that would be really fun. There is a cute Instagram feed called Hot Dudes Reading, and it's just pictures of men reading books on the subway.
Oh
And
my
it's
gosh,
so
that's
endearing.
funny.
I love it because this idea that men don't read fiction is ridiculous. And so to just kind of get in people's minds, like, yes, of course men read fiction.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be nonfiction. So I would love that. I would actually, I kind of did that. I did an Instagram reel for my book. I was on a cruise, and every person that was reading a book, I asked if they would hold up their book and so I could take a picture of them reading. And I just made a reel that was like, look at all these books that people are reading on this cruise. Like people still read books. But I was so moved. I was so moved to see so many people with a book open. And I just finally, like day 3, I'm like, I'm just gonna do a cute little reel. And I just would go up to people and like, listen, I know this sounds weird. You don't have to say yes, but I'm an English professor and people tell me nobody reads books anymore. And I just want to do a little quick Instagram reel showing all these cool books. And people would like light up. They wanted to talk about the book. And it was just a really fun way to talk to people on this cruise and to kind of debunk the idea that people aren't reading. People are reading. They are
Makes me
reading
so
books.
happy.
It makes me happy too. And I wanted to remind people, not everybody on a cruise is just staring at their phone. Everybody intentionally brought a book or two to spend some time with on this vacation.
I love it. And speaking of books, your
Oh, yay. Yeah, thank
congratulations.
you.
I have to say, writing a book is, well, that's a whole other ball game. It's one thing to read a book, it's another to write a book.
Mhm.
And then I think it's another thing to write a book about something that is personal
Mhm.
for a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
Not only because you're kind of addressing pain, um, but it's also like encapsulating your story in a certain amount of constraints, so to speak.
Yeah.
I read your book, your writing, Colleen, it's stunning. You are a really stunning writer.
Thank you.
It's your fertility journey. And what really struck me that I hadn't had an invitation to witness before is the brutality of it, the
Mhm.
brutal nature, the pain that you experienced on this journey, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. How did you handle that? How did you face that? What kept you going?
Oh my God, it's so amazing you just asked that question. Um, because I had a book launch party 2 weeks ago, and my daughter was there, so she's 14 now. An audience could write questions, and she wrote a question, and it was, "Why did you keep trying for me?"
That gave me chills.
Well, everybody was crying. I mean, like it's what you just asked, right? Like, how did you keep going? And I think one important thing I do in that book is sometimes the ambivalence of myself asking, why am I doing this? Is it just because I want to achieve something? Is it because I really want to be a mother and my complicated feelings about that? And and how do I hold all of those things at once? So for my daughter to come through and ask that's the question of the book, right? And so
Yes.
she for her to write down, and I kept it, it's right behind me
Oh,
actually, why did you keep trying to have
oh,
me? And I was just like, because I knew you would be amazing. Like, and here you are proving my point by having the ability to articulate such an amazing question for a 14-year-old kid. Um, but yeah, the brutality of it, I think has been the thing that people are really responding to, because that is the thing, and those four elements of it that you so astutely brought up, that is the thing that no one was talking about in
Yeah.
2008 when I started thinking, I'm just going to start writing some of this ridiculousness down. I never necessarily thought it was going to be a book, but um, it is brutal. And I think people think about the physical or the financial. I never
Well,
really
I've thought about the emotional, but
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
really thought about what was happening to your body. Sure. You know, I thought I could relate to the emotional because it took us some, I mean, I can't relate with the depth and the profundity of your emotional journey, but I know that we weren't getting pregnant at first. And I remember that feeling of watching everybody else. And, you just think, wait, it seems like,
Yeah.
right. But then I think my brain, you sometimes leap off of what you've already experienced. I really had no idea of what happened physically, and then
hmm
the relationship with every other aspect of your person while you're still maintaining a life.
hmm Trying to be a good partner and a good teacher and a good human and a good friend to other friends who are having babies and
Right.
who are kind and compassionate and afraid to be joyful. And I would never want to rob somebody of joy, and trying to be all of those things. Like, one of my favorite images in the book is me feeling like my band-aid tugging against my arm while I'm teaching, because I had to have blood work that morning, and here I am, this kind of just about to be PhD accomplished person, and I can feel that band-aid like tugging me, like there was always something tugging me back to that
Wow.
physical plan.
Yeah.
And it is all consuming physically too, I think. And I did not do IVF. And I'm like super clear about that at the start of the book, that that's like another leap of physicality and emotional connection. Um, but it was funny because my friend was here and I showed her my galley, and she's mentioned in the book a few times, and she comes upon the picture of all the needles, which again, now that's like an Instagram thing. I didn't do that. This was before Instagram. This was before, it was kind of like, oh, we have all these needles. I'm pregnant. I have to get rid of them. And I just thought to myself, I want to take a picture of this.
Yeah.
I had no idea for what. I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
She saw that picture of this mountain of needles, and she
That was
just
the first time I ever saw that. I'd
just
never saw it.
me and was like, oh my God. Like somebody who had been there all along the way. And she
Yes.
saw that picture and she was just like, oh my God. Like it just had she had this visceral response to it. Now it's like a thing. People will post a
Hmm.
picture of needles when they announce they're having a baby through some
Oh, I
kind of,
see.
yeah. So now it's kind of like almost like a reveal, and it's a way
Yeah.
of telling people that they've done fertility treatments, which is
I
so
see.
interesting to me. But yeah, it's just the physicality, the just having to get your blood drawn every day, the poking, the prodding, the wanding, I call it the wanding, like constantly having to sit there and you have to pee, and I've driven an hour and now somebody's like constantly putting stuff up you. So
Right.
there is a physical nature of it that I really wanted people to feel and
Yeah.
understand, because if you're not in this kind of strange world, and it's funny, the world is funny and ridiculous and sad and
Yeah.
all of those things, because some of it's so ridiculous. So yeah, I'm glad that those things really shone through to you, because I really wanted there to be this different layers of experience of, one of my friends wrote on the back of her card, she wrote a question, and then on the back, she like apologized. She's like, I'm so sorry if I was ever said one of those things to you. And I'm like, no one needs to apologize to me.
Right.
I'm okay. But
Yeah.
you never feel on steady ground when you're
Right.
going.
So, I mean, I'm not surprised you wrote a book because you are such a voracious reader and your whole life is dedicated to the written word in some senses of the word. But what made you share this intimate journey? Right.
So we started treatments in 2008. And like I said, I just kind of started writing stuff down, I think for my own mental well-being. But I must have been looking for books about
Yes.
this because
Mm.
I have it. And again, it's right behind me. I have this like wall of stuff I've kept. But I wrote the Toni Morrison quote that if you need a book and it hasn't been written, you need to write it yourself.
Yes.
And so that little note is up on the board behind me that uh I I felt like if no one else is writing about this, I've never really been afraid to write things that maybe are uncomfortable. And I I never sat down and said, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
But I could, there was a sense that there was a gap there. And that gap has been a little bit filled. I think it's 2025 now, so people have gotten
Yeah.
better. There are some books. Um, but still, I was looking, I think the highest it ended up on Amazon for fertility or infertility was like number 50. I was like so pumped. And
Yeah.
I
Great.
and I and I looked at all the other books that were before it, and they were all like how-to books, or like there weren't any that were like I kind of felt like, oh, my book is at the top of that list because it's one of the only ones where it's somebody who's actually talking about what this feels like to
Yes.
somebody. And so there still, I don't think, are many, but there are
No.
more than there were in 2008. But I wrote the book that I needed to read ultimately, is how it finally, I think, came to fruition.
And what about your husband? What a journey for
Yeah.
both of you.
Yep.
And how does he feel about the book?
He hasn't read it yet because he
Oh,
thinks it will be too hard.
yeah, that's so interesting. I thought about,
He hasn't read it.
know,
He has it, but he hasn't.
I get that.
He's like, every time I open it,
He's not ready.
it's hard. And we have a teenage daughter, and that comes with all the issues of having a teenage
Yes.
daughter, right? So parenting is hard right now anyway. And I think
Yes.
it's hard for him to go back to that place. And um and it took me a long time to be able to go back to that place.
Right.
And you bring him up, and there's something really important that kept getting in my way about getting the book out, because people who would read it would say, like, what about Matt? Like, he's not in here that much. And finally, and one thing I like about the book is the footnotes and kind of directly addressing the reader. I basically say, like, this is my
Yeah.
story, and going through this is really lonely. And Matt is here and he's in the book, but his experience is different. And
Right.
so when I finally just wrote that kind of response, I was like, oh, okay, this has unlocked my ability to get past
Yeah.
this, because he is, of course, a huge part of that book. But I don't know what it's like for him to go into the little room where I write about where all men
Right.
go to give their quote, specimen.
Right.
I don't know what it's like to be on the other side of that door. I write what it's like to be about in the group of women who all know what's happening in there, but I don't know what it's like to be in there. He he's a part of it, but ultimately, and I'll just, I'm using the word woman, but I will acknowledge there's many spaces and ways to be pregnant, but um, it ultimately comes down to that person who's
Yeah.
going to have her legs in stirrups every
Right.
morning, and it's lonely, and it is something that falls on women, and so many male partners would say, I wish I could do some of this for you, but they can't. So
Mhm.
that's why the book, he's there, of course, but yeah, he hasn't read it yet.
No, it's
And
interesting.
it makes sense, yeah, but it makes sense to me. Sure, it's really intimate, like I think for him.
So, really, I mean, as a reader, when you read a book, it's not like people are like, well, I have to give all of these characters equal weight. It's hard.
Correct.
It really is about the person who is the protagonist. And quite frankly, we are all the protagonist of our lives. And if we tell the story of our life, it has to be from our perspective. What about that journey as a couple? Um, that can very much devour a couple.
Mhm. It's
And
yeah.
what would you say is the thing that kind of kept you bonded, kept you together? Like, we're all looking for those relationship secrets,
Yeah.
Colleen.
I think one thing that has always helped us is just recognizing we need to be fully formed humans that come into this marriage.
Mhm.
So I was getting my PhD. I was doing this thing I really loved. He was doing stuff he loves.
Mm,
I think I didn't talk about it a lot. It was almost like
oh, interesting.
just like, oh, I have to go, have my blood tomorrow, or he would need to give me the shot, and it was almost like not mechanized, but there was almost like a mundanity to it. It just became routine.
Yes.
It was just it was just
Yeah.
part of the daily. And I think it's awful. It's hard, and I can see why he doesn't want to read it because it was hard. And it's
Yeah.
hard to be a partner watching your partner have a miscarriage, and there's nothing you can do. I'm sure it's a very helpless feeling. And so uh, we weathered the storm, but I could see how you might get to the point where you have a baby and then you just like both are like spent. And that happens. You see it happen. And things aren't perfect, but also we weathered that storm and there's other storms that we weather, but it is really hard on it's hard on friendships, it's hard on a marriage, it's hard on the person. It's just hard. And
100%.
we have to talk about the things that are hard. Um, so they can be easier. That's the point.
Because we were just talking about the curated lives that are on,
Yeah.
social media. And
Yeah.
we always present these faces out there in the public. And so it kind of makes any aspect of life that is just human
Yep.
a little bit lonelier because, and at the same time, I'm not even suggesting that people go, hey, everybody, today I feel this. I mean,
Sure. Yeah.
social media in and of itself, it's kind of a tricky beast. Um, but I love that you're sharing that in essence. So the good news is that you had this little baby.
Correct.
And
Yes.
when I was thinking as I read it, what did you feel fear? Like when you brought your baby home, I was wondering if that came with fear because of all that you had been through and what role did that play in this experience?
I talked about this at the book launch that my primary emotion when she was born was not joy, but relief.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how you're just, because somebody asked about that, like, how do you then, what now you are pregnant and you've had miscarriages, like, how do you get through the pregnancy? And I said, your mind is so messed up. You're constantly doing math. You're constantly being like, well, if I just can get to this point, if I can just get to this point. And and then she was born and I say this out loud because not everybody's happy. I was just relieved. I was like, "Oh, thank God." Like now I am not the sole did I finally did the thing. Oh no, it totally messes with you
Yeah.
because and I think there's a lot I probably could write a whole other book about like postpartum anxiety and
That's what I
all
think.
of those things and you never feel like you're on stable, steady ground. I think your nervous system just remembers all of our nervous systems, remember loss. And we all are, I have a part in the book about how I'm imagining like I'm building up a wall with sandbags against a flood of sadness and like how that's just not going to work. It doesn't work. You can't do that. It will not work. So it is. And the other thing, it's so funny you asked this. I will never forget this. She was maybe, I don't know, 2 months old. And somebody was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm so tired. I had a baby. I was on the tenure track. I was so tired." And she looked at me and she was older and she was like, "Well, don't, just remember everything you had to go through to have her." And I was just like, "Yeah, okay." Like I can like
Right.
I can be tired, and
Yeah.
of course I'm remembering that. Like it's like
Right.
the winged
You can't
chariot.
kind of forget it.
But I was just like, now I have to be grateful every second of my life.
Yes.
I don't get to be tired. I don't get to be ambivalent about being a mother sometimes. I don't get to be frustrated. Like, am I now denied all of that because I had a hard time and struggle to have her? Of course, I'm want her here, but also
Right.
it's hard. It's still hard. So there was these just kind of these gut punch moments even after where like, okay, like now I can't win. Now I can't win this way. Um,
Right.
it was really it makes you not want to say anything. It makes you not want to answer the question when people are like, "How are you?" Usually I give them the honest answer. Like,
Yeah.
I'm tired. Like things are good, but like I'm
Sure.
exhausted. And then to just be kind of slapped with,
Yeah.
"You're ungrateful." That was the tone of that's
Yeah.
the tone of that comment. And a lot of what I want to come from the book is just that people need to be mindful of words that come out of their mouth because they don't know. You don't know how it's going to land.
Right.
And you don't know a person who's already being so hard on themselves. Something that maybe doesn't feel judgmental feels really judgmental and hard. So, and that's there's like an older generation thing to that too. That I think people are perhaps becoming more mindful about. Oh, do you have kids? Like I never ask people if they have kids until they
No.
say something about having kids.
Same.
And then I will ask, but I'm not going to be like, oh, do you have kids? Like, no, I'm not asking that question. Don't ask people that question.
There are a lot of questions that
So,
are
question.
just,
Yeah.
I mean, people will say like to little kids, do you have a boyfriend?
Do not
I
even get me started.
think there's so many levels of wrong to that,
So wrong.
but
So wrong.
people sometimes think words are going to help a silence. And, there's a lot of, and I get it, mocking about this expression holding space. Everybody says, well,
Yeah.
what does that mean? What does that mean? Ha ha ha. It's so silly. And I think I might have even thought that at first. But I think as you're talking, I'm becoming aware holding space means that sometimes you actually don't have the words.
Yep.
And sometimes you're just giving that person room to be who and how they are in that moment. And maybe we just need permission not to cover up what might feel like an awkward silence or to not say the first thing that enters your brain.
Mhm.
Um, because I think sometimes people do it to fill a gap.
Yep.
And words are, I don't know, there's this old fashioned I think it's like Carl Sandburg poem that says like something like, and I'm going to get it wrong, but words have legs, they have feet, they walk out in the world, and
Yep.
then they live.
Yep.
And if we could all just come away with that, which reminds me too, Colleen, that I do think your book is great for somebody who is a mother or on a fertility journey. But I also think it's a really great book to read just because of that. Because what you're also talking about is you can't push away sadness. You
Yep.
can't push away pain. You can't push away the hard things. Sometimes we actually have to walk through it. And
Yep.
your book to me is an invitation to walk through whatever it is that you're addressing, facing. And, you don't have to apologize for the fact that it's hard or painful or brutal. You can say, yeah, this is hard and I'm living it.
I love hearing you say that because I don't want this book to be like pigeonholed into only women should read it or
Yeah.
only women who have been through this because I read memoir all the time. And for the most part, it's not a specific experience that I have had with that person. It is something that I want to learn more about that experience. I want to walk alongside that person so that I can be a more fully formed human in the world. And I was so grateful to one of the readers. I specifically like asked some men to be advanced readers, and I was so grateful to the one person who was like, "This is a book for anybody that has a heart. Like
Yeah.
you it's almost like we still relegate all of this stuff to like the corner for women.
Yeah.
And I don't think in some ways, like I said earlier, the experience is gendered, but that doesn't mean that everybody can't learn from that experience. And everybody goes through something that is sad. And that's the point. This was my thing. People come to grief in different ways, but we are human. You're not going to avoid it. And so, how do you maintain a sense of self, maintain your life, your work, all those things, and at the same time sit in grief and sit in the ridiculous and sit in the love? It's not like if there was one thing I could shout, I wish I could shout from the rooftops, is like, this is not a woman's book. I don't even know what that means. That there is something here for everyone, I hope, be just like any other memoir. Is
Right.
I'm looking at a book right now. It's my books are stacked up. One is about raising a rabbit. I'm not going to raise a rabbit. One is about a woman, and she's lovely. Her this book was amazing, but about a woman whose mother was murdered when she was 9. Like I have had neither of those experiences.
Right.
One is very quiet, one is very loud, and I can take something away from both of those books.
Right.
And I would hope that maybe if people were hesitant that they could remember that. Like just because this is about lady parts, I'm doing the air quotes, and woman's thing doesn't mean that there's not something there for other readers. And that is my like the one thing that I kind of when somebody says that, like it's like a book for women, I'm like, no, it's not.
All right.
It's about something a woman probably, a woman could experience.
Right. So what does the title signify for you?
Yeah. So I can hold up my arm. So people who are listening, I don't know if people are listening, I'm holding up my arm. I have a big tattoo, which is E equals MC squared, which is, you find out pretty early on in the book, is Ev equals Matt and Colleen. So I came up with that wanted to get a tattoo for my 40th birthday. I was pulling in the drive one day. I was like, oh my God. And my husband's a physics teacher. So everyone assumes that that's why that's there. And then I tell him, no, I'm like, this is actually a poem. This is a poem on my arm. And it is like the story of my family. And it's this formula of my family. And it's almost too perfect, right? Like it almost feels like too perfect. So when I wrote the book, it actually had a bunch of different titles. And finally my husband also has the tattoo. And finally my friend was like, I mean, the title is E equals MC squared. Like, are you joking?
Right.
Yeah, that does seem, but I wanted to be really clear about what it was about. So that subtitle, A Story of Infertility, Miscarriage, and Love. Like I wanted to make sure that love was there too, because there is so much love in the book. So I wanted people to know what it was about, but I also wanted it to have a little bit more heart. I didn't want it to feel like all scientific.
Yeah.
So that's where the title comes from.
You're a yoga teacher, and yoga has a presence in the book.
Yep.
Can you tell me about the role of yoga in your life?
Yeah, sure. So you talked about going through it instead of avoiding it. And to me, I've been practicing yoga for 25, 26 years. I've been teaching it for almost 20. And I think that there is something, for me, sacred, but it doesn't have to be, but just sitting down and getting quiet and forcing yourself to sit with things. It is a challenge. It is a skill. It is a practice. And we all like want to run away. So many people say to me that like, I hate yoga. I don't want to be quiet that long. And I'm like, I totally get it. I don't judge. I think that makes total sense to avoid things. But having practiced yoga for more than half of my life and having just different experiences of my body, if we want to even just come back to the kind of brutality of what's being poked and prodded, a reclamation of body. I practiced all through my pregnancy. you have these different relationships with your body and with yourself as you sit on the mat. And it is, again, just like reading, there's very little in the world that is encouraging us to sit and be still.
Yeah.
And so there's a resistance there to that. I have to consume, I have to do this, I have to do that. I joke to my yoga students all the time. The nicest thing about going to a yoga class is just being told what to do for an hour. You don't have to make any decisions. You don't really have to think. You don't have to solve anything. When I teach yoga, I always say to my students, like, about their thinking, and we're not Buddha, we're not going to make all our thoughts go away. But I say to them all the time, I'm like, all that stuff is going to be there on the other side of this hour.
Yeah.
You don't need to, you don't, for this hour, you don't have to have it because it will still be there. This isn't going to solve everything, but it maybe just like let that thinking be a little quieter or a little slower or you're a little less attached to it. And then I always joke that I'm always trying to learn that too. But it has been in so many ways a lifeline and a community as well, that has been this thread, through my life. And it doesn't need to be yoga. It can be church. It can be meditation. It can be that place where you just let yourself be a little quiet, be still and know that I am. Like I feel like that's a universal.
Yes.
It's okay to be still. And that's my worry about my daughter's generation is that they're never quiet. There's never any quiet. And there's something that is lost when our brains are programmed by 15-second TikToks. There's never any space for quiet. And now they're all afraid. They're like afraid of quiet. They're afraid of their own thoughts.
Yeah.
And that is a concern. I don't want to, sound too like okay boomer-ish, but I don't care about consuming the stuff they're consuming. I'm concerned about the lack of stillness you really have to make a concerted effort to seek out stillness now.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's really hard. And so that for me is yoga, but that can be a walk in the woods for some people. Some people it's their daily walk. But how do we invite a little bit of calm?
Yeah.
And I think like yoga and fertility treatments, and I don't even know if I wrote about this, like acupuncture, that really helped. I think there was kind of all those things needed to really come together for me to achieve, and I'm doing the air quotes, like achieve for pregnancy, because that's what they call it in the fertility world.
Oh, is that yeah.
Achieve.
Yes.
Achieve pregnancy.
We love achievement.
Like it's something you have to achieve. Like, well, I love achieving things.
Right.
Good at that. Why am I not good?
Right. I think that is such a beautiful point for our kids and for all of us, because I do think people will even say to me, well, I know you meditate and you like to do this and you like to do that. And I think it's a discipline. Reading is a discipline. I like reading. Also, it's a discipline. I require certain things of myself for the self I want to be. And so I think, I was talking to my youngest daughter about, okay, I'll just say it. I was talking to her about detention. She has a fatal flaw. She cannot get to school on time. She's always
like, we are on that struggle bus as well. But also, I'm going to point out how ridiculously inhumane the time we expect teenagers to be at school is.
And when I say that it's crazy. And when I say that she's late, I'm talking 1 minute sometimes. 1 minute, but you have to scan in if it's 1 minute, and then you get. So anyway, to that end, we were talking about detention because she had to stay. She will sometimes look at me and go, you know what? I can deal with detention. Like, let me just 2 more minutes, whatever. And I said, what I would love in detention is if they would do some sort of mindfulness activities, or like, let's talk about structuring our time, or let's talk about structuring our brain. And my daughter looked at me like, what? I wouldn't even want that. That would be punishment. And I said, no, it's not punishment. It's a time where you've got these kids.
Yep.
and let it be productive. Let it be like elevatory. Why can't we
I
just,
I used to have, and I adore this person, like we were talking earlier, being a teacher for 30 years, you get to see the seeds planted. And I had a student, God, oh, I loved her so much, but she was always in school detention or in school suspension. And I used to send down work and I'd be like, you need to write me a poem about why, whatever, instead of the work. And she's a teacher now. And she
oh,
still remembers that. Because I was like, why don't you just like write me a poem about what's going on down there or what? Because I just wanted there to be some joy and even, I don't know, silliness, even in this space where you're just always being punished. I, I think detention would be so much better if we were like, let's use this as an opportunity to, or even just say, hey, if you want to like sit over here and do
yeah,
what
that's
you
true.
need to do. But if there are like three of you that might be interested in, I don't know, meditating for 5 minutes or doing this, and I bet you there would be kids that would be like, that sounds better than whatever I was gonna do of that time, actually.
Well, when I said that, I forgot that you were coming from the educational perspective. I was like, oh, yeah, she's a teacher.
I used to do detention duty, and you're
Oh my
there and you're
gosh.
like, no talking, blah, blah. And I don't know, can they have their phones during detention?
I think it depends. It depends on who the like detention proctor is. She's done it at each school, each like she did one this year, she did one last year, and she did one. So she's becoming the detention expert, one in middle school.
Yeah,
And she will tell you, like, well, this one was like,
some people,
one
yeah,
one she was not allowed to do homework or have her phone. So they just had to sit there, which I thought was such a
dumb. That's dumb. I will
stupid.
say that out loud. That's dumb.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's stillness, but whatever. And then I think one she did homework, and then I think one was like they could just sit and scroll. So I thought, well,
I was
they can
probably
do
like a
that at home.
reward. Right. I
Right.
was like, that probably like, fine, I can do this here on my couch either. Way.
That's right. But so what do people get wrong about you, do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think that people assume that just because I'm very out front, like I'm very vocal, I'm I'm willing to be vulnerable, I'm willing to say things that I think are right. And I there have been repercussions to that. And I think that people assume when you're willing to do those things that there's no vulnerability there. Like
Mhm.
as if I have some kind of rhinoceros skin that I can just always be out there. And I'm learning, I have learned. There are many voices in the choir. We don't all have to sing at the same time. Like you don't always have to be the person out front. And I think it's because when you are that person out front a lot, and again, director of women's gender sexuality studies, right? So that's a really out front, forward facing
Yeah.
job that it takes its toll. It just like anything else. So just people
Yeah.
who seem very, I'm going to use the word brave, not that I would have put that on myself, but like people who are vocal.
Yeah.
There are that doesn't mean they're an extrovert.
Yeah.
Mean that they don't want to be by themselves. That doesn't mean that they don't um calculate sometimes what to say and what not to say or if it's worth it or not worth it. So there is something I think people look to people who are going to be vocal, but I don't think they think maybe about some of the like behind the scenes of what that means for a person or a family or just yeah, it's hard to be that person. Um and I it's and especially right now I feel like it's hard to be that person and I think people just take that for granted sometimes.
Yeah. So who inspires you? Who do you look toward when you're looking for inspiration?
Yeah, I mean my kid
Mhm.
and uh and always it's just always been my students. Like I really do. My husband has said I'm the most optimistic person he knows because I just really always believe in things getting better. I've always believed in that. I think spending time with teenagers and young adults is very inspiring. I say that to a lot of people because they feel really grim. And then I say, my students are really amazing. And, they're human. They do things that students do. But I get to spend time with people that give me hope in a way that I think a lot of people don't. And I don't take that for granted anymore because I spend time with students who are really optimistic and energetic, just like you would hope any generation of young adults would be. So they inspire me for sure. It's mostly younger people. I'm trying to think of like maybe somebody else that
And
I
I love
would,
that. I love that
but
because that's not
I'm
what you
I'm
hear.
really I'm falling flat on like somebody famous or somebody. It's really just always kind of been watching that like that deep well of humanity
Yeah.
of kids and I call them kids. They're young adults. I tell them, I'm like, I know you're young adults, but you're kids. Like I call you kids. Um, but they are hardworking. They are they have a vision of the future. They want things to be better, and it's inspiring. It's really inspiring to see young people right now. And I know everybody else is like, oh, blah, blah. They are always complaining about them, but that's not always how they are.
Well, that feels really good to hear, actually.
Good.
Um, when you think about the phrase soulful living, what does living soulfully
Mhm.
mean to you?
I think it just be that deep well of humanity that I just want people to be validated. And I think that on that soul level, that human level, we were joking earlier. I keep joking, like, let's put the human back in the humanities. To me, that is soulful living. Like, what is human about this experience? What can you take away from this? What might inform the way you move forward in the world? To me, that is, and it doesn't have to be in church or yoga or anything else. I think the sacred space of a classroom, for example, is a great place where soulful living can come alive. But I am I'm very open with my students. I think that's one of the reasons they like me or appreciate me is I'll be very upfront with them. I'll tell them what I think. I'll share my emotions. And I think just allowing that space, holding space, right, for vulnerability, for being human, that soul, that thing that makes us us, that essence, whatever you call it, that to me is really soulful living is just showing up in your humanness, not your best self. I don't need that from people, but just like your messy humanness is really what I love. I always joke like kids are always crying in my office. Like I'll ask them one question, like and they're like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "You're not the first person that has cried in my office today, probably, because you're human." People ask me that, what do you teach? And they expect me to say a content area. And I'm always like, I teach humans. My content area is English and gender studies. Because I just want, like, there are tiny little humans in front of me all the time. And they mostly are doing their best. And I assume that of most people, which is probably why my husband thinks I'm an optimist. I really do assume most people are just doing their best in this hard thing called humanity and life. And it's hard sometimes to believe that, but I really do. I think ultimately most people want similar things.
Makes me feel hopeful. So I'm going to take your optimism and I'll just wear it as a little jacket today and beyond today.
Yeah, please. Yeah, I try. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for giving us an invitation to witness your story and the lessons and the truths and the power in your story. And thank you. I'm so glad that you're out there in the world educating our young people. That makes me feel great. And doing it with kindness and with compassion. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me and for reading the book and for having such kind words about it and for doing all this good work because this is what people are consuming is podcasts. This is great. This is what we need, in everybody's ear. So I really appreciate that.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. Thank you for being a valued part of the Soulful community. Thank you to William Aronson for writing, recording, and producing the Soulful Connections theme song. And finally, always know you're not alone. We are connected. We're all in this thing together, and you and your story are important. Let's just keep on connecting.